in when time feels limited. Truths that set us free by Kathryn Kuhlman. The message reminds us of life's fragility and the eternal hope found in faith. This sermon is a heartfelt call to live with urgency, purpose, and surrender to God's will. Kuhlman speaks with conviction, guiding us to embrace freedom in Christ, let go of fear, and value each moment as a divine gift. Life is often described as a fleeting breath, a vapor that appears for a moment and then vanishes. When we reflect deeply on the brevity of life and its eternal perspective, we are confronted with the reality that our time here is limited, fragile, and uncertain. No matter how strong or secure we feel, no matter how many plans we make or how many goals we set, life is never guaranteed. The very moments we are living in right now are gifts that cannot be reclaimed once they pass. People spend years building careers, accumulating wealth, chasing recognition, or satisfying temporary pleasures. Yet in the end, all these pursuits fade. What remains is not the length of our days, but the way we lived them, the values we held, the faith we embraced, and the eternal legacy we left behind. This truth is not meant to cause despair, but to awaken us. When we grasp the brevity of life, our perspective begins to shift. Suddenly, trivial arguments, grudges, and material obsessions lose their power over us. We begin to see that time wasted in fear, envy, or bitterness is time we can never reclaim. Each sunrise is no longer just another routine day. It becomes an opportunity, a new chance to align our steps with something greater than ourselves. Kathryn Kuhlman often reminded her listeners that life only finds true meaning when it is seen through the lens of eternity. Without eternity in view, we can easily fall into the illusion that life is about the here and now. But with eternity in mind, we understand that our decisions, words, and actions echo far beyond this short span of earthly existence. Imagine a person standing on the shore, holding a single grain of sand in their hand, while the entire beach stretches endlessly before them. That single grain represents the years of our earthly life compared to the vast eternity that awaits us beyond. When we view life in this way, the urgency becomes clear. We are not meant to live only for comfort, pleasure, or temporary satisfaction. We are meant to live with an eternal focus, preparing for the life to come, recognizing that our souls are designed for something far greater than what this world can offer. This perspective gives hope when facing difficulties, loss, or pain, because we are reminded that what we endure here is momentary compared to the glory that awaits us throughout history. Men and women of faith who understood the brevity of life lived with extraordinary courage. They were willing to sacrifice comfort, endure suffering, and face opposition because they knew that life on earth is temporary, but eternity is everlasting. Their choices were not controlled by fear of what they might lose in the short term, but were anchored in the eternal promises of God. This eternal perspective empowers us to rise above the ordinary distractions that steal our focus and instead live with passion, conviction, and clarity of purpose. It teaches us to measure success not by earthly achievements, but by faithfulness, obedience, and love. The brevity of life also teaches us humility. None of us can add even a single hour to our time on earth. Our breath, our heartbeat, our every moment is sustained not by our own strength, but by the grace of God. This truth should humble us, reminding us that we are not in control of time. We are stewards of it. The way we use our time reflects the values of our hearts. Some people fill their days with business, but accomplish little of eternal worth, while others, with fewer resources or opportunities, leave a lasting impact because they chose to live with eternal significance. The question is not how long we live, but how well we live, how deeply we love, and how faithfully we serve. There is a sobering reality that many people only recognize the brevity of life when faced with loss or when their own time begins to run short. In moments of illness, tragedy, or standing at the graveside of a loved one, the truth becomes undeniable. Life is fragile, and none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. But we do not need to wait for such moments to awaken us. We can choose now in the midst of daily routines to acknowledge the reality that time is precious. When we live with this awareness, we cherish relationships more deeply, forgive more quickly, speak more kindly, and give more generously. We begin to see life not as something to take for granted, but as something to treasure. The eternal perspective also brings comfort in times of uncertainty. When the brevity of life feels overwhelming or even frightening, we remember that God holds eternity in His hands. This world is not the end. It is only the beginning. Every moment lived in faith, every act of obedience, every sacrifice made in love is recorded in eternity. Nothing is wasted when it is offered to God. The struggles of today do not define our future, because eternity is secure for those who trust in Him. Knowing this transforms fear into courage, despair into hope, and ordinary living into extraordinary purpose. People often live as though they will never die, putting off meaningful choices until tomorrow, assuming there will always be more time. But when we realize the brevity of life, we stop postponing what matters. We stop delaying forgiveness. We stop withholding love. We stop waiting to pursue our calling. Instead, we act with urgency because tomorrow is never promised. This urgency is not about panic or restlessness, but about intentionality. It is about living fully present, aware that each moment has value, and refusing to waste the time we are given on things that do not align with eternal truth. The brevity of life also challenges us to ask difficult questions. What am I living for? Where am I investing my time, my energy, my heart? Am I chasing after things that will vanish? Or am I building something that will last beyond my lifetime? These questions invite us to realign our priorities, to choose wisely where we place our focus. Kathryn Kuhlman's sermons often highlighted that without an eternal perspective, people chase after emptiness, but when eternity is the foundation, life becomes rich, purposeful, and filled with meaning. Even the greatest achievements in this world lose their significance when time runs out. But even the smallest act done in love, in faith, in obedience to God, carries eternal weight. A word of encouragement, a gesture of kindness, a prayer spoken in faith may seem small in the moment, but in eternity, they shine with everlasting significance. The brevity of life reminds us not to overlook these opportunities. Each day is filled with chances to make eternal impact, but we must be awake enough to see them and bold enough to seize them. The awareness of life's brevity also fuels gratitude. When we realize how fragile and short our days truly are, we begin to thank God for the little things we often overlook. The laughter of a child, the beauty of creation, the strength to rise each morning, the love of family and friends. None of these are guaranteed, and yet they are gifts placed in our lives to remind us of God's goodness. Gratitude shifts our perspective from what we lack to the abundance of blessings already present. It teaches us to live not in constant striving, but in appreciation of what we have been given. Living each day with divine purpose requires a transformation in the way we view time, decisions, and even the ordinary routines of life. So, many people move through their days without thought, simply reacting to circumstances, carrying out tasks, or chasing after fleeting desires without ever considering the greater meaning behind their existence. But when we recognize that every breath is entrusted by God, the weight of divine purpose presses into our hearts and minds. Life becomes more than survival, more than a string of random experiences, more than the pursuit of personal satisfaction. It becomes a sacred journey of aligning our lives with God's will, a conscious commitment to let each day reflect His calling and His plan. Divine purpose is not reserved for a select few. It is not only for preachers, missionaries, or leaders. Every person has been created with intention, designed with unique gifts, passions, and opportunities that fit into a larger plan orchestrated by God. To live each day with divine purpose means to wake up with the awareness that we are not accidents, that our lives have meaning beyond what we can see, and that even the most ordinary moments can carry eternal significance when surrendered to Him. This perspective frees us from the trap of comparison, where we measure our worth against others, and instead roots us in the truth that purpose is not about competing, but about fulfilling the role we were designed for. When divine purpose takes root in the heart, daily life shifts from being repetitive and monotonous to being intentional and meaningful. Work is no longer just about earning a paycheck, but about serving faithfully and using our abilities to glorify God. Relationships are no longer casual connections, but sacred opportunities to show love, forgiveness, and encouragement. Challenges are no longer meaningless obstacles, but refining processes through which character is shaped and faith is deepened. Even the quiet, hidden acts that no one else sees become valuable when they are done with the understanding that God notices and honors them. Purpose transforms the ordinary into extraordinary because it connects each action, however small, to something eternal. Living each day with divine purpose also requires discernment. The world constantly demands our attention, pulling us in countless directions, urging us to chase after things that promise fulfillment but never satisfy. Without clarity of purpose, we can easily drift, wasting precious time and energy on pursuits that leave us empty. But when we ask God to guide our steps, when we prioritize His voice above the noise, He leads us into paths that align with His plan. This does not always mean grand or dramatic assignments. Often, it means being faithful in the simple things, listening when someone needs to be heard, offering kindness in moments of tension, making choices that reflect integrity even when no one is watching. Purpose is not measured by scale, but by obedience. What may seem small to us may be immeasurable in God's eternal design. Another essential aspect of living with divine purpose is embracing responsibility for our time. Every sunrise carries opportunities, but we are the stewards of how those opportunities are used. To live without purpose is to squander what has been entrusted to us. To live with purpose is to treat time as sacred, choosing intentionally how to spend it. This does not mean constant busyness or striving, but rather being mindful and deliberate. It means saying no to distractions that pull us away from what matters most. It means setting our hearts toward what builds faith, strengthens love, and advances the good we are called to do. Every choice becomes a reflection of whether we are living for ourselves or for something greater. Leaving each day with divine purpose also requires courage. Purpose will often lead us to paths that challenge our comfort zones, stretch our faith, and require sacrifice. It may call us to speak truth when silence feels safer, to extend forgiveness when resentment seems easier, or to take bold steps into the unknown without clear assurances. Divine purpose is not always convenient or comfortable, but it is always fulfilling because it connects us to the reason we were created. Fear often tries to keep us from walking in purpose. But when we choose faith over fear, we discover strength we never knew we had. Purpose empowers us to endure trials, to keep going when the journey feels difficult, and to persevere when results are not immediate. Purpose also brings clarity to our identity in a world that constantly tries to define us by achievements, failures, or the opinions of others. Living with divine purpose anchors us in the truth that our worth is not in what we do, but in who we are in God. We are His creation, His beloved, designed for His glory. When this truth settles in our hearts, we stop chasing validation from temporary sources and begin to rest in the knowledge that our lives matter because He has given them meaning. This identity allows us to live freely, unburdened by comparison, jealousy, or the constant need for approval. It allows us to walk confidently in the path set before us, knowing we are fulfilling the unique role only we can fulfill. Living each day with divine purpose also reshapes how we see setbacks and failures. In a purposeless life, failures feel like dead ends, and setbacks feel like wasted time. But when viewed through the lens of purpose, even the hardest seasons can be redeemed. Every trial carries lessons. Every closed door redirects us towards something better. And every moment of waiting can prepare us for greater impact. Purpose allows us to see that nothing is wasted when we remain surrendered to God's plan. What the world calls loss may actually be shaping us into vessels capable of carrying greater responsibility and deeper compassion. Even pain becomes purposeful when it is placed in God's hands. Another vital dimension of purpose is the impact it has on others. Divine purpose is never only about personal fulfillment. It is always connected to service, to influence, and to leaving a legacy. Living each day with purpose means recognizing that our actions ripple outward, touching lives in ways we may never fully realize. A kind word spoken today may uplift someone who is on the verge of giving up. A decision to act with integrity may inspire others to do the same. A life lived faithfully can become a testimony that draws others closer to God. When we live with purpose, we become part of something larger than ourselves, contributing to a story that continues long after we are gone. Gratitude is also woven into the fabric of divine purpose. To live with purpose is to wake up each day thankful for another chance to make a difference, to grow, to love, and to serve. Gratitude shifts our focus from what is lacking to what is possible, from frustration to faith, from entitlement to humility. With gratitude, we stop complaining about what we cannot control and start cherishing the opportunities we have been given. Gratitude fuels purpose because it allows us to see even challenges as gifts, shaping us for greater strength and wisdom. Living with divine purpose is also deeply tied to presence. Too often, people are caught up in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future, missing the opportunities of today. Divine purpose calls us to be fully present, to recognize that today matters, that the decisions we make right now carry weight. It reminds us that while yesterday cannot be changed and tomorrow is uncertain, today is within our hands. Purpose thrives in the present moment, urging us to make it count, to live intentionally now rather than waiting for some future season. When conditions feel ideal, living each day with divine purpose requires dependence on God's guidance. We cannot fully know the road ahead, but He does. Our role is not to control every outcome, but to remain faithful with the steps before us. Through prayer, Scripture, and openness to His Spirit, we can walk each day with confidence that He is directing our path. Sometimes His purpose is revealed clearly, other times it is discovered step by step. But in either case, trust is required. Trust allows us to move forward, even when the way seems uncertain, confident that He is leading us toward fulfillment of His design. Living with purpose also reshapes how we measure success. The world often defines success by wealth, status, or recognition, but divine purpose defines it by faithfulness, obedience, and love. Success is not about how much we accumulate, but about how much we give. It is not about climbing the ladder of ambition, but about walking the path of service. It is not about being remembered by many, but about being faithful to the one who called us. When we measure life through this lens, pressure to perform fades and peace replaces striving. We begin to see that a single act of love may be more significant than years of chasing after worldly achievements. Freedom through surrender to God's will is one of the most profound paradoxes of faith. A truth that at first seems contradictory, but once embraced, opens the door to a life of peace purpose, and joy. In the world's understanding, freedom is often defined as independence, the right to make one's own choices, the ability to live without restraint or authority. People believe freedom is found in doing whatever pleases them, chasing after their desires, and avoiding any boundaries or limitations. Yet, this pursuit often leads not to freedom, but to bondage. Bondage to fear, to sin, to regret, and to emptiness. The more one insists on absolute control, the more one discovers how fragile and limited human control truly is. True freedom, as Kathryn Kuhlman emphasized, is not found in living according to our will, but in surrendering to the will of God, because only He knows the path that leads to life in its fullness. Surrender is not weakness, though many perceive it that way. In human terms, surrender often suggests defeat, giving up, or loss of power. But in the spiritual sense, surrender is the gateway to strength. To surrender to God is to acknowledge that His wisdom is greater than ours, that His ways are higher, and that His plan far exceeds anything we could construct on our own. It is to trust that the one who created the universe, who holds eternity in His hands, also holds our lives with care and precision. When we resist surrender, we cling to illusions of control that bring anxiety and frustration. But when we let go and place our trust in Him, we find rest for our souls, because we no longer carry the unbearable burden of directing our own destiny. This freedom through surrender manifests in every area of life. When we surrender our fears, we discover the freedom of courage, knowing that God's perfect love drives out fear. When we surrender our ambitions, we discover the freedom of contentment, knowing that God's provision is sufficient. When we surrender our pain, we discover the freedom of healing, knowing that God's grace is enough for every wound. The act of surrender is not a one-time event, but a day